Welcome to
Hello,
episode 10.
hello. It's episode
Bang.
10 now.
Yeah.
You know what's coming up?
New Year.
Chinese New Year.
That's right.
Yes. So what are you going to be doing for Chinese New Year, man?
We are celebrating with my wife's side of the celebration.
Right.
You know, she's Vietnamese, so
Right.
we're doing a Tet style celebration
Nice.
with all the customs that come with that. So looking forward to it. A lot of good bang chung and a bunch of other stuff that I can't pronounce correctly because
Right.
she'll make fun of me for it.
Right.
But yeah, what about you? What are some things you're looking forward
Well,
to?
let me ask you this, man. So the Vietnamese celebrate New Year's on the same day as the Chinese,
Yeah.
Koreans,
Yeah.
right? So what other Asian country celebrates the same as the Lunar Year or Chinese New Year? That is.
Yeah, I mean, because I've heard some new information about it. Well, it's new to me. They're not exactly the same holiday because apparently the Chinese New Year follows the lunar solar calendar and Tet follows the lunar calendar.
Okay.
And there's some other cultures that celebrate the Lunar New Year. That's where the Lunar New Year versus Chinese New Year,
Right.
where there might be a bit of a distinction besides
Right.
just calling it something different.
Right.
I don't know. Do Cambodians or Thais celebrate?
They do.
Lunar
They have.
New Year,
They
or
have.
is-
They have a New Year, but then it's during April. It's like within that month.
I know some people who were Burmese or from
Yeah.
Myanmar, Burma.
Yeah.
Right? I'm not sure what's
So
the
it's
right
like
name now.
So the New Year's for the Southeast Asians, particularly Burmese or was it Myanmar?
Yeah, Myanmar now? Yeah.
Myanmar.
Yeah.
There's Laos, Cambodian, Thai, and some other groups like Korean, and they celebrate the New Year's during April. That's like the
Okay.
So that's why I was like, Vietnam is in Southeast Asia, so why do they follow?
Yeah, probably different historical influences, I guess.
Yeah.
I mean, in Chinese culture, a lot of times we don't even call it New Year's. We just call it Spring Festival.
Spring Festival.
Yeah.
Right,
But it's kind of synonymous. Like people will say Happy New Year. People will say Happy Spring Festival.
Right.
It's kind of the same a lot of the times.
Right. Spring Festival. I never heard of that. I always
Yeah.
hear, New Year's and
Called Chunjie. Chunjie
Yeah.
is just the literal translation is just Spring Festival. So.
right. Your family celebrates that too?
Yeah. So we talk to the family, talk to the relatives. Send gifts.
Yeah.
So, it's always was a fun deal.
Right,
Always was a
right.
fun deal back home. I always got to do my demos for some of the local
Oh, yeah.
celebrations.
I think I think I've seen those.
Yeah. I don't think I can do the jumping spin kick into the splits anymore. I don't think I even want to do that anymore.
Damn. But that's good though. I mean, I seen those demonstrations that you did. I thought that was good.
Yeah, no, appreciate it, man. I'm glad that's on video.
Right.
So now I don't have to prove that I can do it because I don't think I can do it right now.
Yeah. So for me, since I'm from both cultures,
Mhm.
Southeast Asian and Chinese, so
Yeah.
I have two of the best celebrations during Chinese New Year and the one in April. So I mean, our household, we do the whole Chinese thing too, and then the Southeast Asian, Cambodian, Thai, Laos.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
yeah.
Either way,
Right?
a lot of amazing food, right?
Amazing food.
Amazing
Correct,
food,
correct.
seeing family, getting gifts, giving
Right.
some gifts.
Right.
There was a. Did you ever watch that show Bling Empire?
Not. I mean, wait. The Asian one.
Yeah, there's only one. There's only is only the Asian one. There's not
Okay.
another version of it. At least not that I know of yet.
Yeah. You know what? No comment. I have nothing to say.
I'm just gonna repeat a quote from one of the characters. It was hilarious.
Okay.
He said, for other New Years, I'm paraphrasing because he says it in a very blunt way. It's like for other New Years, you wake up, you get a hangover. For our New Year's, you wake up, you get money. So
Yeah,
it was
yeah.
it was a laughable moment. Glorious trash TV.
Right.
That's
What season are they on now?
Oh, they're done.
Yeah.
I think they're not doing it anymore.
Yeah.
Yeah, one of the main people passed away.
Who?
Anna, the one that was half Russian, half Japanese.
Oh,
Yeah,
the controversial one then, right?
a lot of them were controversial.
Yeah.
I guess that's the point of that. It's like
Wow. Holy crap.
Asian jersey, sure, but with a lot more money in there.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
That's
I
crazy.
enjoyed it. I just love the fact that one of the Red Power Rangers was in that show.
Which one was that?
I don't know. It was one of the. It was way after I stopped watching it.
Oh, he was dating one of the girls,
Yeah, yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah. And
Yeah.
then they kind of broke up or something
They
like
broke
that.
up, got back together, broke up. Who knows? I don't know.
Yeah.
I didn't actually keep up with the details. It was just the train wreck TV that we all like.
Yeah. That's
Details
crazy.
aren't important.
Yeah. So, congratulations, man. You
Yeah.
won today, bro, right? Judo
Oh
competition?
yeah, yeah. No, thanks, man. It was fun. It was fun. Um, a lot of things to still work on,
Right.
but yeah, I was able to get a few wins. Back to the drawing board. You learn
Right.
either way.
So is this gonna be a constant thing now that the try to achieve is doing these competitions?
I think competitions, no matter what, is still very important.
Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna do a Stride competition also.
Oh wow.
Supporting my friend Matt Gelfin. He's been organizing a lot to help just promote Stride in New York City.
Mm-hmm.
So definitely gonna go support him and just kind of get myself back into that too.
So is this competition gonna be in New York?
Flushing.
Flushing. Okay.
Yeah, yeah, Flushing, February 22nd.
So Swatchow is pretty big in New York right now.
I don't know how big it is.
Huh.
Yeah, I mean, there used to be a lot of serious practitioners,
Right.
but I don't know how many of them are still around. I know some of the guys who are around. I mean, they're kind of getting older. They're not actively competing as much anymore.
Mm-hmm.
So I know that Lavelle Marshall's been doing a lot to promote like the Mongolian origins of Stride Jiao, and also like there's other styles of Stride Jiao from Beijing.
Okay.
There's a coach, Zhang Weidong. He's been also promoting his Beijing style. He's been coaching there in New York also, and Matt's
Uh-huh.
been working with him. So it's fun. I'm just having a good time doing it.
Is this competition um catered just towards Shuajiao, or is it other grappling schools can
Yeah,
attend
anyone can
this?
attend. It's just Stride Jiao rules.
Okay.
I know some sambo guys who are doing it.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
There are some guys who are practicing the Mongolian styles.
Mhm.
Because Lavelle did an American tour. He's been showing folks the Mongolian his interpretation of Mongolian wrestling. So some of them will probably be there.
Mhm.
Some folks from Boston are coming. Maybe some folks from DC, Chicago.
Right.
This is all hopefully they're all able to make it.
That's so
Um,
interesting, man.
so yeah, it's fascinating. It's fascinating. It's focusing more on stand up
Uh-huh.
grappling,
Uh-huh.
stand up wrestling, and just all the techniques that come with that. You have to stay on your feet to be able to score the points.
Is the rules exactly like judo rules
Nah,
or
very different.
very
There's
different?
no ground fighting.
Okay.
There's no ground fighting, and you're not encouraged to drop down to your knees to throw. You have to stand. You're. There are a couple of techniques where you're allowed to kneel down with one knee,
Mhm.
but for the most part, you want to stay on your feet.
Okay.
Yeah.
So if you fall on your knees, that's it. You're done.
Not that you're done, but in the one knee technique, you just won't get as many points.
Oh wow.
Yeah, but yeah, if you go for a throw and you fall, then you lose the point. Like if you go for a throw, you slip, you tag a hand down, that's your loss. That's the other guy's throw. So just more stakes, like more when it comes to staying on your feet, just um more urgency to not go down with your opponent as
Right.
much, and definitely not to go down with first before your opponent. So no
Right.
sacrifice throws.
Sounds very challenging though.
Yeah, it definitely lets you focus, drives you to focus on your posture and stability a lot.
Right.
Judo has that too, but judo also, there are techniques where you can roll into your back and throw them, where you can drop down first and throw them.
Right.
So
Right.
in
Wow.
some ways, it's more challenging. In some ways, it's different.
Right.
You know,
Which one you like better?
doesn't matter to me. It doesn't matter to me. I mean, it is cool to learn something that's maybe a little closer to my culture of origin. But to me, it's more about the culture of the training group itself. Like if I enjoy training with the group, if the competition is well organized and frequent, then I'll do whichever one. So I think also I'm speaking from that perspective because they're not. I love them, but they came. I practice a lot of other arts. I was lucky enough to practice other arts before them, so it's the feeling isn't quite the same.
Right.
So not to disrespect either of them,
yeah,
but
yeah. So I mean, like certain martial arts practitioner favors one style, right? So do you favor grappling over stand up or
I'll always favor stand up.
right,
I think because I started in that.
right,
So it's like no matter what, we can say whatever, right? But when shit hits the fan, it's like not even in like a very serious way, but when you have to react, it's like you're gonna go into one mode or the other.
right,
I think for the most part, right? For me, it'll still be striking,
right,
like because having done Taekwondo first and then boxing and then as much Balintawak as I have, it's like it's still going into striking, and then like the Kung Fu has just kind of like driven that even more.
right. I mean, you kind of have it all, like almost complete because it's always better to be complete than just one style, like because you have your striking already, you have your grappling, and then now you have the weapons, right?
Mm.
So I think that's a good thing. A lot of people should drive towards that.
Yeah, but it's just challenging, because and John Wei-Dong said in Chinese martial arts there should be hopefully I don't bastardize it, but you should be able to grab and manipulate. You should be able to punch. You should be able to kick, and you should be able to throw. Right. So it's like it's one of those things. What was it? Tira Shuaina. So you should be able to do all four within the Chinese martial art. To consider yourself a complete kung fu person.
Right.
When it comes to the combat side.
Uh-huh.
So I think that's also why, what we were talking about earlier, these kind of competitions are important. Even though it is a sport, right? But there's always been martial arts sports.
Right.
Right. Wrestling is the oldest and most common thing across all cultures, right? Every culture has some sort of wrestling practice, right? It's just a question of how much they might emphasize it. Mongolians emphasize it a lot, right? It's one of their three main arts, right? People from Senegal emphasize their version where they like tape one hand, I think, and they'll punch that hand, and they'll do sand wrestling. Koreans had their sand wrestling. I never can say it right, but it's like Surium something.
Yeah.
Looks like sumo. Japanese have sumo. China, like south of the Great Wall, used to have a lot of different versions that are similar to sumo also.
Southeast Asians too. Like Cambodians have their own wrestling as well.
I actually saw some clips of people from Vietnam too. It looked a lot like sand wrestling.
Yeah.
Indians had their version of mud wrestling too.
Yeah.
So it seems like it's just, I don't know if it's spread from one source or if this is everyone kind of came up with the idea once as trade happened. Maybe people started meeting each other more.
Well, I think it's natural. I mean, two bodies two bodies clashing together. It's obvious it's gonna be
grabbing each other's belts, yanking it up. Yeah,
I mean, it's always is gonna be that form no matter what. It's the same thing. Like if you look all over the world, right? Like every culture has a bow and arrow, right? But I think that's passed down though somehow.
A lot of cultures have bows. Every culture has a bow and arrow. A lot of cultures have some version of a curved sword.
Right.
Some sort of slashing weapon, some sort of spear version.
Right.
So it could be passed down. Could just be, before guns.
Right.
Like that's how foot soldiers kind of handled it.
It's so interesting, man. I love stuff like that.
Yeah. But I guess also like to go back to your earlier question, like wrestling or grappling or striking, right?
Right.
I'll say like I'm still gonna be. My mindset is probably gonna still be more of a striker
Mm-hmm.
because it's what I started with, right? I'm sure like if I started in wrestling, it would have gone in that direction too. But I think wrestling is something that's very important for just martial arts overall because it lets you know how to manipulate someone's body, and you can train it at a high intensity without like excessive injury risk. Like you can't box hard in your 40s and 50s. You're not gonna have any
Mm-hmm.
brain cells left,
Yeah.
right? But
You mean sparring wise, though? I mean, they can
yeah,
still
yeah, sparring.
practice
You can
it.
definitely still
Yeah.
practice. Yeah, yeah, still practice. Do a lot of drills. I mean, I love doing that too,
Yeah.
especially within the Balint walk. Um, but you can't spar close to 100%
Yeah.
without damaging your brain cells.
Yeah.
Compared to something like judo, yeah, there's still injury risk, like your joints and everything. But I feel like that's more protected compared to getting kicked in the face or punched in the face over and over again.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So, but those are my thoughts
Yeah. Yeah.
on that.
You know how like a lot of film portray like the grandmaster
Hmm.
or the highest level sensei, and they're
Yeah,
they're at that age point where they're like in their 70s and or 80, right?
sure.
But then their skill set is so high up. Do you think that has something to do with their skill, or because to me, when I see an old person, I think
Yeah, yeah,
they're like weak now, and they're like, but how the hell do they still maintain their power?
yeah,
You know,
yeah,
it's gotta be that the skill set that they've been learning for years or something like that, right?
yeah. I mean, physical decline is inevitable.
Right,
This their physicality, I'm sure, is when they're in their 80s. You can't have it the same as in your 30s or
right,
40s,
right.
right? But I do think that is the case. Like you can see a lot of these older people. Like I'll give you a couple of examples, right? Like Taton Illustrissimo, the inventor of Kali Illustrissimo.
Hmm.
I saw videos of him when he was in his late 80s, early 90s, still fast, still sharp, still able to time people. Illustrissimo was a sword style.
Yeah, yeah, I know
Um,
that is.
and and he's still able to time people's cuts.
Mm.
He's still quick, still able to handle the blade very well. But is after doing it for 70, 80 some years, right? Like my grandmaster Baba Tabwada, he's in his he's in his late 70s now. He's 76. Still
Mm.
fast, still powerful.
Yeah, I see, man.
You know,
Uh,
still
I,
don't want
w-
to get punched by him.
I witnessed it myself.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
It's
Yeah,
pretty
you saw that
fast.
last
Yeah,
year, right?
yeah.
Um, some other examples. Willem de Thors. He's in his late 80s,
Right.
still fast with the blade, with his weapons. Kuntal Salat, high level guy.
Uh-huh.
Leo Gahe.
Right.
Yeah, Leo Gahe Pakiti Tertia, even into his 80s, he's still very fast and sharp. So I think there definitely is something to that. I mean, I'm sure you had to be cautious about how you practice. So like
Maybe
if you
it's
accumulate
weapon
injury,
base, because weapon base is the extension of your hand, right?
sure, yeah,
So maybe that's a given. But let's talk about like no weapons.
hmm
Like are their strikes as strong when they were younger?
I think they can figure out ways to make it stronger.
Right.
And I say that because through internal martial arts, I've felt some really weird power from
Right.
strikes.
It probably won't look smooth as their younger days, but then I'm sure it's still
No, I'd say they can make it smoother.
right. Well, I
Um,
mean, I know there's a lot of Chuck Norris fans out there, and I'm not trying to disrespect, but if you look at him now,
Sure,
and then when
yeah.
you see him hitting the bag,
yeah,
yeah, it's like you could tell age has something
yeah,
to do
yeah.
with the way he moves now.
Yeah, I mean, inevitably, we're all mortal, right?
Yeah.
Inevitably, Father Time beats us all. Well, I don't know if it's a lot of people, but people who practice consistently and practice with good methodology, they can continue to improve their speed and power over time.
Right.
That doesn't mean they have as much muscle as it used to have, right?
Right.
Or as much like testosterone or whatever, right?
Mm-hmm.
But with skill, you could definitely gain different abilities to move.
Right.
I'll say that. Now, does that mean that they could win in a fight the same way? I would say that depends on many more factors, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
how well you can take a shot, how well you can like recover from that adrenaline dump of having to deal with that situation.
Right.
Um, and just how much energy you have,
Mm-hmm.
right? But as far as like the skill to demonstrate the art, I think that could go on for a while. Like I would say into their 80s or 90s if they're
Yeah, I agree.
cautious,
Yeah, totally agree.
and especially too like looking at it from an internal martial arts practice perspective.
Mm-hmm.
There are ways to build yourself up and build up skill to that point where you're still able to improve in the skill well into your late age.
Mm-hmm.
So that's all, and also to be able to still demonstrate it.
Right.
Yeah.
Um, I seen. Um, so do you really think it's a factor that martial arts will help with certain health issues as well, right?
I'll say so.
Yeah.
I'll say so. Mainly because it keeps you active.
Right.
You know.
Yeah, that's number one.
I mean
Yeah.
that's the biggest thing. Like one of the biggest public health issues that we have is just sedentary behavior,
Mm-hmm.
right? Especially if a lot of people who work office jobs are sitting a lot, they're cutting off circulation, they're building up chronic inflammation.
Right.
Those are all risk factors for heart disease down the line.
Right.
So like, if you're able to prevent that by getting up a couple hours a week and just moving around a bit, that could be that could be something that really keeps a lot of issues away.
Right. Staying fit is always the key of extending your life.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
But I mean, there are like masters out there that are like big, and here's
Yeah.
just one guy that said this, what kind of like annoyed me a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
One of his like podcasts, he was saying how he went to Thailand
Mm-hmm.
and it motivated him because he saw a lot of like the trainers are like fit, right?
Sure.
But I mean, does he really go into the deep side of like Thailand? There are trainers that are like pot belly,
Mm-hmm.
that's been through war and they still teach.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
I
yeah.
wouldn't necessarily like look down on him just because he looks like that. I mean,
Sure,
teaching is different from. He has a lot of knowledge. He's gonna be able to guide you no matter what, right?
Yeah. There's definitely that image too. Like I hear
Yeah.
that you hear that story about like I hear that story from some people I know who go to the Philippines, right?
Yeah.
It'll be a guy. It'll be like a hypothetical guy who's like in his 60s, flip flops, belly, cigarette in his mouth, and he's
Right.
able to just lock him up,
Yeah.
right away,
Yeah.
right? So, yeah, that's where skill can factor into the point where it's not just where it's almost like separated from physical fitness because they just
Right.
done that movement so
Right.
much, right? That they've been in that situation so
Right.
much that they just kind of know how to do it.
Right.
Yeah, that could
Yeah.
definitely be the case.
I'm not saying it as an excuse to
Yeah.
be like that, but fitness,
But you could look at it the other way too, right? Like they're out there like these pot belly guys in Thailand, right? They're out there for probably hours a day training people,
right.
Holding pads for them, right? Clinching with them, probably doing some drills with them that are partner work. If they were not doing that, if they were just sitting around all day
Right.
and they were eating the way they are and they're smoking the way they are, they'd probably be way worse off.
Right.
So you could also think of that too, I think.
Right. Huh.
Yeah. So I would say any movement, look coming from an exercise science perspective, right? Any type of regular physical activity is probably better than none.
Right.
Unless it involves like something really dangerous, like getting hit in the head, then maybe you shouldn't do it. But
Yeah.
if you're out there walking around, holding pads, drilling with people, showing people movements,
Staying active in a
Yeah.
safe way, I guess. Right?
yeah, as much as you can,
Yeah.
as much as you can. I would say in that sense, traditional martial arts does have a lot to offer, just when it comes to like, just something to do throughout your life.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Right. Huh. So, I don't know. We touched based on the whole, when it comes to martial arts in sports and reality base.
Yeah.
I think we did
Maybe a
talk
little
a little bit of it, but what is your input on that? Like, do you believe like a lot of guys that comes from a sports really a martial arts style can be able to fight in the streets?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'll say they can. I'll say that there's definitely a lot of guys who trained in like a classical
Uh-huh.
system or trained in a traditional system
Uh-huh.
who don't have much good to say about a sport version of that art,
Right.
right?
Right.
And it can depend on, I think, the sport too, right? When it comes to the quality of how well it really trains the skills of that art,
Mm-hmm.
right? But I would say sports has a lot to offer in terms of the culture that it builds.
Uh-huh.
Getting a lot of people to know about the art and practice the art,
Uh-huh.
and pushing performance levels.
Right.
Especially in like kids and young adults, and
Right.
and it's also a lot of times more honest about the results, right? Like with judo or strijo, right? Do the guy I try to throw the guy. Did he get thrown or did he not get thrown? He tried to throw me. Did he throw me or did he not throw me?
Right.
Right. If the answer is if he didn't throw me, oh, why didn't it work? Right. So
Right.
it's like you can't. It's hard to hide behind
Yeah.
excuses.
Yeah.
You can still do it, but it's harder.
It's always been that debate though. Like, there's guys that come from the traditional, then there's the modern style, and there's the sports style, right? And they
Yeah.
all put themselves in a situation like, can they be able to protect themselves on the streets,
Mm-hmm.
right? And I agree that all of them have a way to defend themselves, but at the same time,
Mm-hmm.
they're also very limited to, I think it depends on the person,
Depends
actually.
on the person. But I will say my personal opinion, right, is easier, assuming that the person buys in. The person who's the martial arts athlete probably has an easier time picking up classical traditional skills than the other way around.
Right.
Right. Not that it can't be done, but the reason I say that is if you're a serious athlete, you kind of know what it takes to get good at something. It doesn't even have to be like boxing or MMA or anything. If the person's like a serious basketball player, right, or a serious soccer player, or a serious swimmer, right, and you show, and let's say I decided to train this person in Balintawak.
Right.
I kind of had the discussion with my instructor as well when I was
Yeah.
first starting to teach. Let's say I teach this person Balintawak. That person is going to kind of automatically probably have an instinct for the fact that they need to drill a lot. They need to practice the movements over and over so that's second nature. They understand that there's a certain level of progression,
Mm-hmm.
right? And they know that there's a certain level of maintenance that needs to go into it. Right? All these skills can go away if you don't practice it, right?
Right.
So that's why I would say the culture of sports. Speaking more idealistically, there's a lot of negative things about sports too.
Mm-hmm.
But looking at the positive aspects of sports, I think that's something that martial arts people need to embrace more.
Right.
And it's kind of what some of my coaches talked about, like training like you're an athlete, right? It doesn't mean that you're gonna go win the Olympics or a UFC title belt or make millions of dollars in the NBA, but treating the art like an athletic pursuit.
Right.
Right? How do you get more power? How do you improve your endurance? How do you improve your posture so your technique is better? How do you get more repetitions in throughout the week so you're actually improving week to week, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because there's a lot of people in traditional martial arts, not going to name any names, but you see them practice, and month to month or week to week, month to month, like year to year, they're kind of the same. Or they regress.
On terms
Right.
of what? You mean the ability to fight, or just being, um is it like physically challenging for them to is that what you're saying?
I'm saying that from my observation,
Mm-hmm.
their skills can decline,
Mm-hmm.
and their their physical their physicality can also decline.
Right.
And sometimes life happens, right?
Mm-hmm.
You can't practice for a certain amount of time. But when it's a pattern across different types of people
Right.
or across different individuals who maybe don't treat it like an athletic pursuit, then I think you'll see it happen more consistently.
I mean, I seen like sports related martial artists like Muay Thai guys that try to get into kung fu,
Mm-hmm.
and they can't do it. It's just they can't. I think, like I said, it all depends on the person, I guess. But it's the same way around. Like
Mm-hmm.
some traditionalists can't really get into sports. You know, like they can't.
Mm-hmm.
You know.
I guess I'm looking at it for a little bit more as an idealist,
Mm,
right? Because like to me, someone who does traditional martial arts should be, to a certain extent, embrace that traditional martial arts mentality,
right.
right? Meaning you practice something every day, right? And people are busy. People got jobs.
Right.
People
Right.
got
Right.
families, right? So that doesn't mean it's like the old days where you're sitting in horse stands doing hundreds of punches every day.
Right.
But getting the repetitions in every day, 10, 15 minutes, right? Getting the habits in every day. Sitting in your living room just practicing certain ideas, right? I think that kind of traditional martial arts person, if they did get an opportunity to, let's say, do a 2-month boxing camp, like a legitimate boxing camp,
Mm,
then their martial arts would improve drastically. On the other side of it, like let's say we take a professional boxer.
mm-hmm.
Let's say we take, it doesn't even have to be Mike Tyson. Well, I guess this guy is kind of on a Mike Tyson level. Let's say we take Terrence Crawford.
Mm-hmm.
Terrence Crawford, one of the pound for pound best boxers in the world, but also knows how to wrestle. Also, just a really strong guy. So he's like 140 something, or he weighs in at 140 something. I saw him deadlift 400 plus pounds. So he's
Oh, wow.
he's a bit of a freak. Let's say we show that guy kung fu from a good teacher,
Mm-hmm.
right? He'll get it. I think I have a feeling that he would get it quick. You know,
But then again, it's that person.
it's that person. Yeah, he does have a lot. He probably has some genetic
Yeah.
advantages too,
Yeah.
and he has the experience of being in a lot of fights.
Right. Have you seen Fight Quest?
Oh yeah,
Remember that big dude? That's
that was Human Weapon.
Was it Human
Yeah,
Weapon?
that was Human Weapon. That was Bill Duff, the Human Weapon. Fight Quest was the two smaller guys, Jimmy Smith and Doug something.
Right. Right. Well,
Yeah, same premise.
Yeah.
Same premise for
Yeah.
the show.
Damn, I get them confused. But
Are you thinking about when they were in Korea?
no, the big dude. Well, you can see that he tried. Like
Yeah.
and but the movement, I'm guessing maybe because it's like in the beginning stage or something
Yeah,
like
sure.
that. But the little guy, he comes from an MMA background,
Mhm.
and he was able to
Yes.
learn a lot of those techniques that's being shown. But the big dude, which he's just a football player.
Yeah.
It took some time.
Football player, pro
Yeah.
wrestler. Yeah. I guess that does goes to show like how similar are the sports that you do, right?
Yeah, yeah,
But even comparing that big dude who's a
Right.
pro football player and pro wrestler, comparing him to, let's say, someone who has a black belt in a kung fu system,
uh-huh.
if they really focus on if he learned that kung fu system, he would probably learn it more quickly, just
Yeah.
because he does have, he knows what it's like to have contact, he knows what it's like to train a lot. Right, you could take and the fact that he has athletic ability,
Right. Yeah.
But yeah, probably he won't be as good as the other guy who's the MMA guy if they
Uh-huh.
both learn the same thing. But comparing him to a lot of these traditional martial arts who maybe don't pay as much attention to
Right.
the physical grind,
Right.
I think he might move ahead of them.
Right. I remember we were just talking about the one in Korea. Like they went to Korea, Taekwondo, right?
Yeah,
And he was kind of like, he's like, well, this little guy. What's this little guy gonna do? you know?
yeah.
But that little,
Yeah,
that was a crazy kick.
yeah. I like those guys who were teaching the bodyguards.
Yeah.
I like the fact that they were basically training those movements on techniques on
Yeah.
concrete.
Yeah.
And then he offended the big guy. He said, "Yeah, you're a little slow. Maybe if you lose some weight." He's like, "Lose some weight. It's all muscle." Yeah, that was one of my favorite episodes.
Yeah.
Just because the physical display from a lot of those guys was so cool. Like, remember that guy who could kick the cigarettes out of people's mouths, and that other guy in the big gym, right? He was like older. He's probably in his 60s, and he had a guy. He did like a 540 kick.
Yeah. I miss those shows, man. I wish it's still
Yeah.
around.
There's a lot of those types of shows from like some of those shows. Some people from like Scandinavia did a version.
Right. China did something like that too.
Yeah, there was like there's like experiencing real kung fu. That was the
Yeah,
Chinese version.
yeah.
The Hong Kong version was Kung Fu Quest.
Yeah.
That was with Philip Nung.
Yeah. Some guy from England did the same thing when he traveled like to the Philippines, and supposedly he created his own martial arts. I guess.
Different topic. Yeah, different topic. Yeah, but it's but I guess getting back to like what we were talking about, it's one of those things where sports have that place because they do instill a certain amount of discipline that maybe a place that labels itself a traditional martial art doesn't always do as well.
Right.
Right. So like I'll give you an example. When it comes to let's say judo organizations, right? Judo is the second most practiced sport in the world today behind soccer.
Right.
But overall you still get a pretty high quality of practice. Right? Like if you see a guy who's a judo black belt, you probably give more respect to him than you do a lot of other black belts.
You mean the martial arts in sports?
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
I mean, you get that with MMA guys. You get that with Muay Thai. You know?
Yeah. But I think judo has been able to more or less maintain a certain level of tradition, but also combine it with the competition of sports.
Right.
Yeah, I feel like they've been able to kind of hit that balance very well. I mean, partly because Kano was a pedagogy professor. Like his major was in education. You know, he tried real hard to promote it, but the consistency of quality across judo is pretty amazing.
Yeah. How come like traditional martial artists they downplay on sports? You know, and vice versa. Sports related martial artists will downplay on traditional too.
I mean, the trends that I've seen is just the sports guys will say, "Oh, you guys are just a bunch of fat, out of shape cosplayers," right?
Okay.
I mean, they don't use those exact words, but that's kind of the feeling that I get.
Well,
from
not
them.
all traditionalists are like
they're
fat,
not. Of course not.
Yeah.
But of course not. But that's the image that certain sports people have,
Yeah.
right? Especially if you talk to like UFC people from 10 years ago. And the traditionalists will say, "Oh, the sports guys are just a bunch of meatheads who have no respect, they don't have skill, they're just brutes," you know. And that's also not true. You know, I find that a lot of MMA guys are very open to the idea of training traditional martial arts.
Yeah, now though,
like maybe they don't want to learn the whole system, but they want to learn certain things. Yeah.
No, I mean a lot of them respect it now because before, you know, like I hear it all the time, like, you know, like F this style, F that.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, why would I want to do that? You know, this is more superior. It's like, you know, you hear it all the time, but even right now, I'm not naming who, but there's a lot of traditionalists that still, it's like, you know, they downplay on sports. And like, it's like, oh, they're a bunch of jocks, bunch of steroid users. You know, they can't be real like, you know, this.
I think that's a mistake. You know, you don't have to adapt everything from that sport, but I think there are certain things that you can adapt from sports to help enhance your practice.
Right.
You know, just the idea that
I think just try both, see where it goes. You know, like, I mean, I you know, I had a couple kung fu friends that, you know, got into like Muay Thai and judo, and you know, and they loved it. They loved to switch off and on, off and on. You know,
I mean that's also a lot more. There's a lot more history to that than I think a lot of people think.
Yeah.
So even in China, like the 1800s, there was a lot of influence by boxing.
Right.
Though, and those the other way around too. A lot of like Wing Chun, Choi Foot, those guys also influenced boxers when they were able to interact with them.
Yeah.
Like,
Not a lot of people know that though.
Yeah, didn't you tell me about those Irish bare knuckle guys who want to learn Wing Chun?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, so it's there.
That same video.
Yeah.
What's his that black actor? You
Michael
showed
Jai
me
White.
today. You showed me what's his name?
Oh, Eddie Griffin.
Eddie Griffin, when
Yeah,
he's
yeah.
practicing on the Wing Chun dummy.
Yeah.
I think his instructor's name is Samuel Kwok.
Yeah, Samuel Kwok from the
Right.
Wang Shulong lineage, I think.
You brought up the Irish boxing, right? Samuel Kwok was the one that was teaching the Irish boxers Wing Chun.
Yeah. I heard a lot of good things about Samuel Kwok.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So there's a video of these Irish guys like duking it out in like some kind of barnyard in like Europe.
Yeah.
And Samuel Kwok
Sounds about
sits
right.
in the back, just watching them. and then when they would bring him to the corner, he would coach them. He was like, "You gotta move," And then you would see like behind the scenes of him just coaching them and teaching them movements. So I was like, it was so interesting to see.
Yeah.
It's just random too that just one small Chinese dude just there in the back.
That to me actually does. That to me is a Wing Chun teacher having more of a coach's mentality,
Yeah.
right? Like a coach of a sport, in that he's willing to train people who might not be interested in necessarily learning the whole system from
Right.
beginning to end, and just pledge themselves to that system,
Yeah.
close the gate off to other systems. But
I mean, like
he's willing to coach people who want to learn something.
Yeah. I mean, these these Irish guys, they're like big, thick paws, kind of like MMA fighters and
sure,
stuff
sure.
like that.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
they're willing to listen.
Mm-hmm.
So I think they see that Wing Chun has something for them to add in their element.
Yeah. I will say too, like a lot of those Southern traditional martial arts, they do to me they have an athlete's approach to the practice. Not even to say that they're a sport, right? Obviously, they're not a competitive sport in and of itself, in the art itself. But the way they approach it, right? The way they do the mukjang every day, the way they do the partner training every day, the way they do the forms every day, it's the same thing hammered over and over and over. That's what I think a lot of traditional arts have lost in terms of that approach is a part of the tradition.
Right.
It's like you're doing the same stuff over and over again. You're refining it over and over again. You're testing it against different body types
Right.
over and over again.
So let me ask you this then. Like, if you were to pick a traditional martial arts and turn it into a sport, what do you think? Which martial arts would be good for sports?
That isn't already one?
Yeah, like something new. Like, to me, I always feel Wing Chun could be a thing.
Wing Chun kind of has it
Is it
in that
really?
there's not competitive Wing Chun leagues, but they do have these like Wing Chun versus Choi Foot competitions, full contact sparring.
I know that, but
Yeah.
I'm talking about like really like sports, kind of like judo, MMA. But then within their own rules and regulation, like
Wing Chun could be one. I think Baji could be one too.
Baji,
Yeah. 8 extremes.
kind of like the sticky hand competition or something like that,
Or like how well you can knock someone out of a
Yeah.
ring. Because the thing is, like, a lot of these traditional arts have been done as a sport
right,
historically. Because in Chinese martial arts, there's been Lei Tai tournaments.
Yeah.
Right. You're on a raised
you mentioned
platform,
that
right?
before.
Who
Yeah,
can knock
yeah,
them off?
Yeah,
So as far as arts that emphasize knockdown ability, I would say maybe like Xingyi, Baji. From what I can tell, maybe Bak Mei, White Eyebrow.
really. Why?
They emphasize a lot of explosive short distance power.
Okay.
Yeah, there's some.
Um,
I see some of those guys online. This guy in Australia named Dane Tobias. He's very good.
right.
Um, I want to say there's a school in New York, but I could be wrong now. I don't know if they're still around.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but I feel like those types of arts could be good. You just have to,
I see.
create a rule set about it. It's
Right,
like, oh,
right.
first person to knock the guy out of the ring
I've seen like
wins,
the
or
Tai Chi ones though, where they do push hand
yeah,
competitions.
yeah.
Um.
Push hands are working on one specific aspect of Tai Chi.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so I mean, it's a legit thing. It's just it's one specific type of skill.
Right.
Yeah.
Huh. What else? What else you think that will suit for sports?
As far as direct contact, right? Not just forms competitions.
Yeah,
That's
not
what you're
just
saying.
forms. No forms.
Right.
Like combat, like a combat sport.
Yeah. I think a lot of kung fu systems could be done,
Uh huh.
or have been done.
Right.
Especially now, like you have different fight leagues with weapons.
Right.
There's different fight leagues that have spears and double sticks or double
Yeah.
swords.
Yeah.
Um, I like to see more of that develop. I know that's
Yeah, they
developed
have like
more.
that. What was it the night combats
The HEMA stuff.
yeah, Hema stuff.
Yeah. I feel like HEMA.
Hema looks cool.
I
Man.
respect those guys a
Yeah.
lot because they seem like they're very serious about their craft. They go really hard.
Yeah.
And they're really about like exploring. All right,
Yeah.
and they even have less to go off of. Like they don't have like surviving lineages. They just kind of have to go. From what I understand, they just have to go. Oh, this is a weapon. All right, how did they got? Maybe how these guys use it. They have to go by like manuals and stuff, right?
Right.
Kung Fu, we're lucky enough to still a lot of these old masters still around to show us to at
Yeah.
least like give us a strong reference point. It's like, all right,
Eh,
well, how should we do it?
Well, I'm not saying all of them are, but it's kind of watered down though.
Oh yeah,
From
of course
the
it is.
original source, right?
Of course it is.
So
But I think we can rediscover how people used to do things.
right.
And maybe even improve upon it, right? Because that's
Mhm.
kind of the goal anyway. Each generation hopefully can add something to it. Otherwise, it's a stagnant art.
Right.
Right.
So yeah, I don't, I'm not the type that's like super like traditionalist. I know that once it ages, something's gonna have to change about that art,
Yeah.
right? So on that, what martial arts do you think right now that's still really old school, that still traditional, that hasn't changed? Because I know Taekwondo changed, man. Like from back then to now. Muay Thai is the same from back then to now.
Sumo, maybe?
Sumo. Okay.
Sriam,
Okay.
Mongolian wrestling. Although, from what I hear, there's been a lot of changes there, too, from the past
Like
150
like
years.
what kind of changes did they have?
I heard there used to be pins. Now they don't have pins.
Oh, okay.
Also, the different Mongolian wrestlings, there's some of the rule sets can vary greatly.
Right.
So I'm sure there's been some change there that's driven it.
Right.
See, that's the other thing too. A lot of these arts are not as old as people think.
Right.
Like Chole Foot's maybe a couple hundred years old.
Uh-huh.
Xin Yi's, the founder of Xin Yi, I think, lived in the mid 19th century.
Mm-hmm.
Founder of Bagua lived in the mid 19th century. Tai Chi, I think they do have origins that go back to like the 1600s,
Mm-hmm.
but I've heard from reliable sources that Tai Chi, as we know today, probably not more than 150 years old.
Mm.
Wing Chun, I mean, Ip Man had a big hand in showing the world what Wing Chun is today, as we think about it, right? But there's some lineages out there that don't come from Ip Man, but they're not as popular.
Yeah. In I think in the kung fu world that was like that, but was Bruce Lee though. Your man Bruce Lee was the one that brought internationally in a way. Like when people see Bruce Lee, they see Wing Chun too.
Sure, they see Wing Chun, but also like, and they only see like one lineage of Wing Chun.
Yeah.
And Ip Man did produce a lot of top level guys
of
too.
course.
He produced like 10 high level
Yeah,
guys
but he
that
wasn't.
we know
He
about.
wasn't well known. Only well known in that circle. Because you know when the Yip Man movies came out,
Yeah.
a lot of people, like a lot of my non-Asian friends, didn't know who that guy was,
Mm.
and they're like, "Oh wait, so he's Bruce Lee's,
Sure.
master."
Yeah,
So
yeah,
like,
yeah.
yeah, that's how they found out about it. You
Mm-hmm.
see, so if it's or if they're martial art like Chinese martial arts, they would know who Yip Man is.
Sure, yeah.
So I would say Bruce Lee first. I mean, but Yip Man's famous, man. He's famous there already. But to the martial arts world, he's famous.
Mm-hmm.
But now everybody knows who he is now.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I think they were trying to do the same thing with that other Chinese figure.
Wang Fei Hong.
No, the other dude that Jet Li portrayed. Well, he portrayed Wang Fei Hong too. But Hong.
Feng Sayok.
No,
But
no,
I don't.
no. He was poisoned. Remember?
Oh, Hoi Yanjia. Yeah,
Yeah. They were trying. They were trying to make him famous as well too.
Yeah,
Right?
yeah. That was one of my favorite Jet Li movies.
Yeah.
But I mean, Hoi Yanjia did a lot to try to, ironically, turn kung fu into the sport.
Right.
Right, because he started the Jingwu,
Right.
the Jingwu organization.
He's a good example of why doing kung fu martial arts with a health is beneficial when it comes to health because growing up he was always like he was not healthy at all, right? And I think it was like I read up on him like how I think his dad was or somebody was trying to push him away.
Yeah, his dad was a
Right.
teacher in the family lineage
Right.
system. His dad didn't want him to learn.
Yeah.
He wanted him to be more of a scholar, but he ended up exchanging. He ended up getting the kid that the dad hired to tutor him to teach him because that kid also learned from his dad.
Right.
And eventually his dad accepted him to learn from him. But yeah, I wonder if that's also why he decided to push him more towards the sport, or one of the reasons. But
maybe he just felt like, damn, man, like you can't say no to me. I want to prove them wrong or something like that.
Oh, as far as establishing the
Yeah.
martial arts organization,
It's like it's more like I think that's later on.
Yeah.
He probably fell into it. It's like, you know what? Yeah, I'll do this. But I think it was more how I felt like maybe in the beginning, like I'm not gonna let these people put me down, man. If and plus he probably had the love for it too. So
Sure, yeah. And at the time he got famous for fighting foreigners in challenge matches and beating them.
Yeah.
How accurate those accounts are is kind of up for debate, but he had that reputation. That was at a time
Wait,
where
was that true then that he fought foreigners in a competition?
I believe he did, but which ones he fought, that's kind of up for debate.
Yeah.
Um,
Oh, that's interesting.
There's also, at the time, for the national pride of the country.
Yeah.
This was like the late Qing dynasty.
Right.
There was a lot of chaos. Foreign powers were coming in, occupying land, occupying trade advantages. The Boxer Rebellion had just ended like a few years before, and
Right.
that ended in disaster for a lot of people. So, like, national pride, ethnic pride was at an all-time low, so he was kind of a part of the movement to start to kind of build that back.
Right.
That ultimately led to the Nanjing Guoshu Institute, that the Republican era
Right.
Established too.
Um,
So there are a lot of things that went into that.
Did his real account show it? Did he really meet a blind woman?
Oh, I don't know.
Did he start planning?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean that movie has a lot of stretching effects.
Yeah.
Yeah, so
The movie's so dope though.
yeah, it was a great movie, but I don't think he was a hothead at the beginning.
Yeah.
Also, his father actually outlived him. Like, in the movie, it shows that his father
Oh.
died by the time he was an adult.
Oh wow.
But in real life, his father actually lived like 5 more years,
Right.
5 years later than Hoi Jia did, because he died fairly young.
Right. You know what the funny thing is? I was watching it, and my friend was like, It's like what? It's like it's just the Matrix. So I was like, why would this be the Matrix? It's like this is like clearly not the Matrix. It's like that dude. He's in the Matrix though.
Oh, Colin Chow.
Yeah, I was like, what?
He was dressed nothing like the guy. Nothing
Well,
like
in
how
a
he was in the
Matrix, they
Matrix.
would like have these like where they go back and when they're training
Yeah.
and they would dress certain ways. He
His hair.
thought it was a scene where like I was just like, what?
Oh, I see. So
Yeah,
maybe it was like a
yeah,
simulation.
yeah.
Okay, yeah, okay.
Like
That,
yeah, exactly, like a
yeah,
simulation
yeah.
of like
Okay,
an
I
old
see why
kung
you might think
fu,
that.
like
Yeah, I know kung fu.
right. But great movie. Um, who else? Who else had a big impact at that time?
Like the mid 2000s,
Yeah.
because that movie came out in 06. Tony Jaa was making a big impact at
No,
that
I'm
time.
talking about like real people from the past.
Oh, from the early
Yeah,
early
like-
19th,
like,
early 20th century. Wang Fei Hong had a big
Wong Fei
impact.
Hong, correct, yeah.
Wang Fei Hong had a big impact. A lot of the Choi foot masters had a big impact too.
Who?
Because apparently back then, I have to look up their names, but apparently back then Choi foot was actually the most popular martial arts style in southern China. It wasn't Hong
I thought it was like a Hong Kong thing. Like Hong Kong thing for me was always that style and Wing Chun and Hung Gar, right?
It probably happened later on because a lot of people,
Okay.
because of the war and everything, the civil war and everything, a lot of people fled from China to Hong Kong. Yeah, so that's how you had a lot of martial arts from different parts of China living in close proximity to each other.
Right.
So that probably made an interesting like competition scenario.
Right.
That's probably also why a lot of those people from that generation got so good because they were constantly competing with each other.
Yeah, I heard they have competition on like they'll brawl like on rooftops
Yeah,
and
rooftop battles.
it's crazy.
The guy who taught Bruce Lee did a lot of those too.
Yeah.
Like Wang Shulong, he did a lot of rooftop battles.
Same thing with Bruce. He did those battles as
Supposedly,
well,
a lot of those stories were actually his teachers, his
right?
coaches' stories. Yeah.
Wait, so it's not facts that he did those fights?
He did them, but the number of fights are up for debate, and a lot of them were actually
Oh.
from Wang Shulong, who coached him day to day.
Oh wow.
Because
Okay.
also, from what I hear, Bruce Lee was, he was a child actor, so he couldn't mess his face up.
Oh right.
Yeah, he was a very popular child actor in Hong Kong at the time.
Right.
So he had like 20 some movies as a kid.
Right.
So he was fairly famous. He was always a performer.
Right. You know what tripped me out the most?
Mm.
Finding out that, Southern praying mantis style. Yeah, I mean, this is what I heard from somebody telling me that
Right.
it's not really Southern praying mantis.
Oh, okay.
It's just some other form of kung fu. So they said that they hit the original style. I don't know why they did that.
Mm.
I mean, do you see a lot in like a lot of traditional kung fu's that they would do this, like hide certain styles or technique?
I don't. Well, I know that's a lot. Some systems would have a public version of a form and a private version of a form,
Why though?
so they would know who's actually a closed door disciple.
Right. Okay.
Because I think remember too, like a lot of these kung fu lineages are connected with
Like
potentially
they're like
less
cults,
than
right?
savory, potentially less than savory people. Some of them are gang affiliated, so some of them are secret society affiliated. So they're not always going to be fully above ground about stuff.
Right.
Right? It's not like today where you have advertisements on YouTube and billboards and Google ads. Right? Back then it was very underground stuff.
Right.
Especially during a time where firearms weren't very prevalent. So if you had good fighting skill, that was a real serious advantage,
Mhm.
right? In a chaotic society.
Right.
So I'm sure they would want to try to protect their advantage in that case. Right.
I mean, there's a lot of like sifus out there that would like not show the actual thing though, but they still teach. So I don't understand that.
Nowadays?
No, not nowadays. I'm just saying like before. I always hear stories from guys that I know. They said, oh, they learn kung fu, but they're not the actual kung fu.
Yeah.
So I don't understand. I didn't like. Why are you learning from a person like that, man? I'm sure you can find a seafood that will teach you the real
And
stuff.
maybe they can't. I
That's
mean,
just weird to
how
me,
many
man.
holders of a lineage are really around
Right.
in a place that's not in China or in Southeast Asia or something? You
Right.
know, like if you leave a country, if you leave the old country and you come to like San Francisco or New York or L.A. or whatever,
Right.
you're kind of the only game in town for that art. So, not saying that all of them did, but you could potentially just kind of make up whatever. So
Yeah,
it's
that's crazy though, man.
like if I went up to certain people and then told them that I was dropped off at Shaolin at age 2, how do they really know that I wasn't?
Right.
You know, one day when when I learned how to walk, I peeked behind the door and I saw an old monk who normally just sweeps the steps, but then he took a broom and then he flew through the air with it. That's how I first got inspired to learn kung fu. That'll be my
Insane.
story.
Insane, man.
Shout out to Master Ken.
Oh
But
yeah.
but
Speaking of Master Ken,
Mhm.
is he? I know he's a jujitsu practitioner. Does he do other martial arts? He seemed like he would though, by the way he moves.
his jokes are way too specific to not have some experience. So it's his real name's like Matthew something.
Oh wow.
But he does have some experience, I think, in like Kempo or karate or something.
Oh wow. Okay.
And I think that his character that he creates now is kind of a spoof on a lot of like over the top characters he's
Right.
met.
Right. It's
Yeah.
hilarious, man.
Yeah, I heard stories about people who were not Asian who were teaching martial arts back in like the 70s and they were speaking Asian accents.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's I mean, I guess kind of like how potentially like Steven Seagal kind of like puts on this character
Yeah.
of a wise master.
Well, I
And he
mean,
talks in a slow pace
we
to
talked
exaggerate his knowledge.
we talked
I
about
will
this
continue
too.
to speak like this for the rest of this podcast.
We talked about this, like how, in those martial arts competitions. Remember, I talked about it.
Hmm?
Like all the Asian coaches,
Yeah,
they're just wearing like sweats, Adidas sweats,
Hmm?
windbreakers,
yeah,
and then you have like the non-Asian coaches wearing it in traditional garments,
yeah.
and it's like it's kind of like, which, hey, I like I have nothing against that, but I'm just saying, I'm just
Yeah.
pointing the facts that I see it more often on a non-Asian wearing that than an Asian, I mean,
What
what do you think about that?
I think about that?
Yeah.
I think
It's the same thing as like doing the accent. No, I mean, but I think the accent is more ridiculous than, I mean, people can wear whatever they want.
Lawrence, you would like to understand my thoughts on this topic. Well, I can tell you that I believe, as the great Confucius once said,
I don't know how people talk like that.
he who sells cosplay gets 1,000 students. He who wears T-shirt gets 10. Yeah, it's a marketing ploy. I think it's a
Yeah.
marketing ploy. I'm not saying some of those guys can't be good,
Right.
right? But, yeah, why else would you dress up in something like that when in the
Right.
modern day we probably never dress like that,
Yeah.
right? So, even in like old Chinese culture, old Japanese culture, it's probably like a specific class of people who had a lot of money,
Right.
and they probably just wore that for like special occasions,
Right.
right? So if a kung fu or karate or taekwondo, whatever master it is, if they're wearing that stuff every day, that's it's
Right.
a marketing strategy.
Huh.
Yeah, which is fine, I guess. It's entertaining to talk about at least.
Yeah. Yeah.
And again, not to say that they can't be quality martial arts people.
Yeah. Yeah. But usually that leads to them not being able to do martial arts either, though. Like I seen dudes.
I met some who can.
Yeah.
I met some who did have a good understanding. Actually, a good example of that is Moses Powell's students.
What?
Moses Powell, Sonisi's Ryu, something. I'm not saying it right.
What is that?
It's like is a basis of is based off of Japanese jiu-jitsu. A lot of wrist locking and throwing.
Say it again.
I'm probably saying it wrong now. Sonesis Ryu.
I never heard of it before.
Yeah, Moses Powell. So he was good. He's got some students that are good.
It's kind of,
But at least when they trained, they wore the traditional or
it kind of
some version of like a traditional
It
Japanese
kind of sounds
garb.
like this judo style that they do a lot of fancy throws.
They did do a lot of fancy throws.
Yeah,
They look pretty painful too, actually, because it was like all off of the wrist lock.
there's another name for it, but they say it's judo. But then
Daitu Ryu.
I don't know what it is, but their throws are not like. It doesn't seem practical. They just look very showy.
I think some of those throws too is more to practice a skill,
Right.
or to demonstrate a skill.
But there's a
and
name.
Also, like, if you don't go with it, some of those throws, I think if you don't go with it, you're gonna snap your wrist.
Yeah.
So that's why it probably looks showy.
Yeah. I don't know. It kind of sound like what you're saying.
It might be that one.
Yeah.
There's also Daitu Ryu. It's like based off of like some of the islands in the southern part of Japan or south of Japan. Apparently, also the founder of Aikido trained with those guys.
Okay.
Yeah, and that was part of his inspiration for Aikido. But from what I know about that art, it reads like an internal martial art, like the way they're able to use sensitivity, the way these old masters are able to throw like legitimately top guys. Right? There's a book. There's a book called I think it was called Invisible Power, about a Japanese. He's a math professor, but he spent his time learning Daitu Ryu from his teacher.
Mm-hmm.
And the book's basically like a memoir of like the time he spent with his teacher, the stuff that his teacher would tell him, the stuff that he witnessed his teacher do. And he told me that into his 90s, his teachers were throwing guys everywhere. Like throwing guys all over the place, like tough guys who like 200-pound judo athletes. You know, like legitimately tough dudes, and his teacher was just making them fly. Well, not in a compliant way either.
There is these old videos depiction of this old frail small judo sensei that was like they had people trying to throw him.
That was Mifune.
Yeah.
If you say, I don't know how you say
that.
That
was very interesting to see though.
Yeah.
On that level, high level, where he understands it.
Mm-hmm.
He understands how to like intercept the throws. I think it's all about learning. I bet you it's because of like learning from the balance and like certain body builds. Like he controlled it very well. I was just like, dang, like how does he do that? Joe Rogan talked about that on his podcast as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, and also, judo is one of the arts that Joe Rogan does respect a lot.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, so I'm sure he's gonna have admiration for that. I need to look more into that though.
Yeah,
but apparently, yeah, he was like one of the main respected figures back then. He's like almost, the way people talk about him is almost like they have like a godlike reverence for him.
right.
Like just like
is
apparently,
that the only video that showed him in there?
I haven't seen
the
others.
last video.
It may be.
Oh
yeah.
Wow. All right, so I think this is about it, man.
Yeah.
What do you think? As usual, there's always fun.
Yeah.
So let's keep it up. Again, guys, if you have any suggestion, please leave it in the comments, and then we'll see you guys again.